Hello, and welcome to the webinar, Protect Any Database with Zero Trust Data Security. My name is Michael with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have a few administrative details to share with you, and then I'll turn things over to our esteemed speakers. First, we would like to thank Rubrik for their partnership with today's event. They have been wonderful partners to Argyle and are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. So thank you again to Rubrik. We appreciate you joining us today. We welcome you to stay connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please follow us on Twitter at Argyle Exec Forum, and also be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I also want to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we've curated based on the feedback we've received over the years from our members. Argyle is very proud and protective of this policy, as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We've worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, please submit all questions that come up during today's event into the chat section of the interface. Following the discussion, we've set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Justin Rees, Senior Product Marketing Manager with Rubrik, and Chris Lumna, Solution Architect, also with Rubrik. We're pleased to have Justin and Chris here with us today for the webinar, Protect Any Database with Zero Trust Data Security. Welcome, Justin and Chris. Over to you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Justin Rees, and I'm a Product Marketing Manager here at Rubrik. Unfortunately, my colleague from the Rubrik product team, Aditi, fell under the weather and couldn't join us today. But I am very happy to be joined by one of our resident database experts, Chris Lumna, who is a solution architect here at Rubrik. And we're very, very lucky to have him here with us today. And we're all really excited to be here with you to discuss a really interesting topic, protecting any database with zero trust data security. And so, like most of you already know, protecting databases has never been more challenging for database teams. There are more types of databases than ever before, deployed across more places than ever before, with larger data volumes than ever before. And this explosive expansion has left database teams struggling to rein in their siloed tools and be able to kind of wrap their arms around these manual processes to ensure that these vital systems are always protected. But to make matters worse, traditional tools are susceptible to ransomware, often leaving these vital systems vulnerable to attack. And today's database teams require a flexible framework that can be used to protect any database across on-premises and the cloud, really providing centralized management, some automation, efficiency, and most importantly, zero trust data security to ensure data is always available so you can always recover. And so today we're going to unpack the perils of legacy database protection, explore how to keep your backups protected from ransomware, and accelerate the recovery with zero trust data security. We'll also take a look at what's needed to provide specialists with the flexibility to use their own scripts while still centralizing management for backup and infrastructure teams. And lastly, we'll also look at the methods to automate operations to get your time back, improve efficiency, and save on resources. And finally, to close out, I'll be passing it over to Chris for the fun part, a quick demonstration to walk us through how Rubrik provides the flexibility to protect really any database with zero trust data security. So a lot of content for you today. So let's jump right in. So like you would expect, enterprise environments can have hundreds, if not thousands, of databases. And these databases are often backed up to a storage location using something like NFS, using SMB, or a third-party, target. And an environment at this size and scale often leads to hundreds of jobs that need to be configured and monitored frequently to ensure backups are successful. And we hear from customers all the time that it's not uncommon for them not to know whether all their backups have been successful or not. But also the relative criticality of databases is typically tribal knowledge, or in more hygienic cases, documented somewhere. But more often than not, legacy vendors do not provide a way to embed the application criticality to backup service level agreements. And in addition to the operational inefficiencies, this causes unnecessary backup storage consumption. And of course, not every database requires the same level of RTOs and RPOs. And this has several downstream consequences. Most commonly, this results in delays in restoring the data for creating clones or, God forbid, production recoveries. Really not what you need in the case of those 2 a.m. calls. But the biggest problems happen when the backup storage is not secure. The bad guys are smart, and they know they need to target the backups as well for their mischievous plans to succeed. So imagine, getting locked out of your production database without having access to those backups to recover from. Turns out, backups aren't your last line of defense; they're your best line of defense against attack. And so at Rubrik, when we think about database protection, and from the customers we talk to, there are really a handful of capabilities that are a must for any modern data protection solution to address these problems. First off is zero trust data security. This is imperative. With ransomware and other cyber attacks on the rise, modern backup and recovery solutions really need to be built around this idea of zero trust. So you always know you have a clean and reliable backup that is always rapidly recoverable. These are going to be capabilities like immutability, air gap, multi-factor authentication, role-based access control, and more. And we'll actually level set on some of these capabilities later in the presentation. Second, of course, is performance. It is critical to have a solution that constantly prioritizes performance and continues to innovate, making it faster and easier. And that's true of both backup and recovery. With potentially hundreds or even thousands of small databases, or even just a few large databases, the ability to back up more data in less time while ensuring it is rapidly recoverable, regardless of the size, is priceless. So the closer you can get to near zero RPOs and RTOs, the better. Next is simplicity and ease of use. And for Rubrik, this means building tools in a way that really allows, pretty much anyone to use them, not just database specialists who come with years and years of experience. And this is crucial because it eliminates single points of failure, but simplicity also means some automation so your teams can get their time back and delivering a solution that is more set and forget rather than something that requires continuous care and feeding. However, this automation shouldn't come at the expense of control, especially when it comes to managing recoveries. It's important to have a solution that keeps the database teams in the driver's seat, allowing them to exercise their expertise when they want and how they want, while abstracting the rest. And finally, all of this should be done under one platform. The more point solutions you have, the more time and resources you need to manage them. Not to mention, you probably even need a few specialists. And so a single platform streamlines operations, but will also give you the visibility you need to ensure your entire environment is protected and in compliance with your business SLAs. And these capabilities should be designed to be deployed in a way that allows you to decide how involved you want to be in managing the database operations. So in the case of Rubrik, for example, we actually provide a variety of ways to deploy Rubrik for databases. So at one end, you can deploy Rubrik to completely manage a lot of the operations for you with the automated protection that is delivered through a connector-based service, which is built leveraging the native database tools, such as RMAN for the Oracle databases, VSS for SQL Server, Backend for SAP HANA, and VendorLib for DB2 as an example. Rubrik will automatically discover databases as they're created and will automatically protect them with inherited business SLAs that you define. So parameters like backup frequency, retention, and archival. But also, because we're leveraging the native database tools, we can also leverage native backup and recovery features to maximize the performance. Things like leveraging incremental merge, for instance, on some of these Oracle databases when backing up, or providing a one-click recovery that will automatically pull your latest recovery and apply the logs to roll you forward. But let's say you wanted something a little more middle of the road, something that will allow you to offload scheduling of backups, but also allows you to manage other aspects of the operations using your own scripts. You should be able to do that. Or going even further, what if you want to be able to manage everything yourself using your own native tools and scripts, managing the discovery of databases, managing the scheduling of protection, managing the recovery? You should be able to do that. And with Rubrik, you can. This flexibility to manage everything yourself with your own native scripts is great. It means you can back up pretty much, really any database, even if it's a, older system, some kind of legacy system. So that whether you're talking Sybase, SAP on Oracle, MySQL, Informix, PostgreSQL, you can protect it with a single platform. But there's something you have to be careful of, and that is the platform should still provide a number of baseline capabilities. So things like data immutability. Traditional solutions often serve as general kind of NFS or CIFS targets, and that means the entire backup repository can be encrypted and locked up by ransomware, which really, kind of negates the purpose for the backup. And so Rubrik offers an immutable repository once the backup is complete and the NFS share is unmounted. But also Appleware data reduction. So for many mainstream or emerging databases and applications, Rubrik performs effective data reduction without using excessive compute and memory. This is achieved by leveraging, whenever available, host-side change tracking mechanisms to reduce data from the source, as well as choosing an optimal chunking method based on the nature of application or database for data reduction. And in contrast, traditional deduplication targets perform blind deduplication without application awareness. And this results in high compute consumption, as well as maybe an average ingest throughput and poor restore performance. Next is co-stewardship between DBAs and backup admins. And so with Rubrik, DBAs are empowered to use their own scripts and native utilities, while backup admins can ensure backup data compliance using the same SLA domain policies to set backup frequency, retention, replication, and archival. Unlike legacy solutions that separate deduplication appliance management from the backup software management. We also want fast data ingest. So Rubrik's innovative approach and scale architecture results in faster ingest at many orders of magnitude than traditional deduplication target solutions. But cloud mobility is also crucial. You need to be able to mobilize data to the cloud for long-term retention, or to even protect databases in the cloud with the same features that you have as on premises. And lastly, but definitely not least, is instantly accessible clones. And so unlike legacy deduplication targets that are not built for test dev use cases, the snapshots on Rubrik can be mounted and exposed on demand to test dev environments, reducing the time needed to make data available for test dev use cases without being able to impact production. But so drilling into security a bit more, since it is so important given the current market risks that we're seeing, we often see confusion in the industry on a few key terms. So I thought I would level set on what a modern approach looks like from Rubrik's perspective. And so first up is air gap. So no air gap. This is the majority of backups today, and it means that all your backups are available online and are accessible from the network and can be changed, which means they can be compromised, ultimately eliminating your ability to restore. Next is logical air gap, and this refers to backups that cannot be accessed from the systems they are protecting. And this is, a basic requirement for securing your backups. And again, logical means the system is still connected, but the data cannot be accessed. Now, a physical air gap is backup data that is physically disconnected. And the best example of this is tape, because it can't be compromised by ransomware. Tape, of course, does have some issues with recovery speed, which is why it's not a great tool or defense, because downtime will be so lengthy. Moving to the next column, to another term, you're probably seeing more and more, and that is mutability. And so as a concept, it's often misunderstood. It's not simply that no one can delete backups. Immutability is defined as data that cannot be overwritten or changed. And so you obviously don't want an attacker to be able to make changes, because that means they can encrypt your data. Also good to point out that immutability should be combined with retention lock, which ensures your backups and files can't be deleted or changed by a compromised admin account. Now, Rubrik believes that the sweet spot is a modern solution that, by default, gives customers logically air-gapped copy of the data that is immutable by the file system itself. It's not an add-on capability. It's native, so that once a backup is written, it can't be physically changed or accessed by the systems it's protecting. But it also, like I mentioned, it should also have additional retention lock capabilities layered onto the first copy of the data, and not just sent offsite or to the cloud, which can have some impact to the recovery time. Now, some industries require a physical air gap, so it's important to have a solution that gives you the ability to really support both. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg. There are a number of other security features you need to look for, features across data health, user access, data encryption, application access, and even when it comes to the APIs, things like the SSH, key-based authentication for the CLI, or secure protocols for third-party systems, or scoped API tokens for some of these service accounts. And whether or not you're using a deployment model that completely offloads operations or allows you to completely manage the operations, the solution needs to support these features to keep your backups available. Okay, so we covered a ton of ground, unpacking the perils of legacy data protection, as well as exploring the key capabilities you need to keep your backup secure, regardless of the deployment type that you choose. But now let me actually pass it over to Chris for the fun part, and that is to see how Rubrik delivers this level of flexible protection. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. And today I plan to show you how our SLA-driven managed volumes work for databases. In this example, we're going to use MySQL specifically. Snapshots or backups in Rubrik are all controlled via an SLA domain. An SLA domain is nothing more than a backup rule, and that backup rule answers three basic questions. How often should you take a backup? How long should you keep that snapshot? And when should you take that snapshot? So let's look at an existing SLA domain that I have, and we're going to use this SLA right here. If I click edit and look at this, I first have to choose a workload. So we've set one up for managed volumes here, and I can use this for other workloads if I wanted to, but in this case I want to use this specifically for managed volumes. As I mentioned, an SLA domain is your backup rules for three basic questions. This first column on the left is handling the how often should you take a backup, or how often should you take a snapshot. In this case, I'm taking a snapshot once a day, and this right-hand column is answering the question about how long should you keep the snapshot around for. In this example, I'm taking one snapshot per day, and I'm retaining it for 7 days. Rubrik will automatically delete the older snapshot once it expires based on this rule. Now, you may need additional snapshots to be taken. Maybe you want a monthly snapshot to be taken, and maybe you want that snapshot to be kept for 12 months. There's also the opportunity to do maybe a yearly backup and keep that around for 7 years. These values are configurable, and you should put into these columns what your business requirement is looking for. The third question is all about how or when the backup should happen. In this example, I'm taking a backup or a snapshot at 12 p.m. and I'm limiting it to only take snapshots from 12 to 1. In most business use cases, you'll probably want to have this, let's say, 10 p.m. or sometime after the business is over, and limit the snapshot window to only 1 a.m. And what this tells Rubrik is that you start taking your snapshots at 10 p.m. Don't take any more new snapshots after 1 a.m. Snapshots that are in flight will continue until they complete, but nothing new will get started come 1 a.m. The next page of a SLA domain rule is about archiving. Where do you put those long-term backups? I mean, in the example we just used, we're keeping backups around for 7 years. Keeping them on the local storage isn't the most cost-effective thing. So putting them out to something like an AWS, an Azure, or a GCP, and this is just the examples I have in my lab, would be more cost-effective. You could also put this out to some type of S3 compatible storage inside your data center too, if that was appropriate. You also have the ability to turn on replication. Replication allows you to copy a backup from one data center to another data center and manage how long that backup lives in that second data center. Lastly, the page here talks about the name of the SLA or your backup rules and a description that gives you some understanding about what this SLA domain is for. I'm going to close out of this since I don't want to make any changes to this and just hit that. Now that we've created our SLA domain, let's look to apply it to something. So come here to our manage volume section, and here we're underneath our SLA manage volumes. Now, I've already created some SLA manage volumes here, and we'll use these for our demo. Now, I always create my SLA domain, the name of the volume, to be the name of the SQL server or the MySQL server or the host that I am taking snapshots of. And this is because when I need to do a recovery of the databases that are being written to this managed volume, I need to know where they are. This, from a DBA perspective, makes sense. All the database backups for this MySQL server or this SQL server are in their respective volumes. Let's dive into this particular managed volume. Now, this is a MySQL instance, so this is sitting on Linux. So the first thing I did is I gave it a name. Then I provisioned a size for the managed volume. The size is a thin provision disk quota. It just tells Rubrik, don't allow more than 1 terabyte in this example to be written to the managed volume at any given time. And don't exceed that much used storage in the share. But don't worry, if you need to expand this, you can always expand it at a later time. Simply giving this a value of 1 terabyte, for instance, doesn't mean it's going to automatically allocate 1 terabyte of space to the managed volume. Like I said, it's just a disk quota, just a soft cap preventing you from using too much without understanding that you need more. We have our Rubrik cluster here, and then we have what MySQL server it's connected to. And we actually just hit the drop-down box and we can just pick any one of the available servers right from this list, or we could type it in and it would automatically find it for us. When you create your managed volume, you're also able to tell it an application tag. The application tag tells Rubrik how to dedupe and compress the data that's being written to the managed volume. And there's various application tags, some for SQL Server, some for Oracle, MySQL, I believe there's one for Postgres as well. And there's also, if you don't give it a tag at all, then we just attempt brute force dedupe to reduce the size of the data being written to the managed volume. On the next page here, we talk about protocol settings. The protocol, because it's Linux, is NFS. If this was Windows, and I'll show you a Windows version, is SMB. The username in this case is who should run the script. Now I have an OS user on that Linux host called Rubrik Backup that is a non-root user, doesn't have elevated permissions. This is the user that's going to run the backup script that will initiate the backup into the managed volume. And I'll go into what the script looks like shortly. Next is where should the managed volume be mounted to on the target Linux host. So this is the path that I want it to be mounted to. This will be a share that sits on the Rubrik device that has a mount or we're mounting to that Linux host. When the backup script runs, we'll tell the script to write into this folder here. The back page of the SLA managed volume is what script we should run. Now in this case, the path to the script is put right here, and I'm just going to be using a MySQL Enterprise backup script to write a backup to the managed volume path that I gave on the previous screen. Once you hit save, that updates the managed volume with the options that we just chose. Here is the script that the Rubrik backup user on the Linux host will run. In this example, and this is a very, very simplistic example of doing a backup, your script will probably have a lot more functionality to it. But the basics are here. First, we're going to remove the contents of what's been written to the share. Next, we're going to run our MySQL Enterprise backup command with these parameters here against the MySQL database, and then this will output a backup file into the managed volume that Rubrik will use. Now, the reason why I am removing the contents from the share each time is because I'm looking at the way Rubrik works in relation to the snapshot and also relation to the share. What you write to the share is then snapshotted. That content is now immutable from that point going forward, so it can't be changed. So if you're doing backups pretty frequently, let's just say once a day, and I write my Monday backup into the share, and then on Tuesday I want to write another backup, well, I don't need the Monday backup to be in the same share that the Tuesday backup exists in, because I have a snapshot of the Monday backup sitting on Rubrik already. And I can always access that backup if I need to via Rubrik at a different point in time. So keep that in mind, that you are controlling the contents of the share. The SLA domain is going to control the contents that are in Rubrik, the snapshot lifecycle. We set up our managed volume. We looked at the script. We're going to write the backup to the managed volume, but now we want to tell Rubrik to start utilizing that SLA domain, that backup rule, to start running that script based on the backup rules. So the way you do that is, if you're on the managed volume, click Manage Protection. Then find the appropriate SLA domain for that object. In this case, we're going to use this SLA demo SLA domain right here. So I hit next, I hit assign. This will apply that protection rule, that backup rule, that SLA domain to this manage volume. Now every day, this will get one snapshot per day of the MySQL databases that are available. Now, let's say I'm about to do a change and I want to take a backup of my MySQL database right now. How do I do that? Well, easy enough. You have this take on demand snapshot function here. And when you click on this, this will initiate the running of that backup script right now. So I'll hit next, hit confirm, and we'll see a little box down here that pops up and says the on-demand snapshot scheduled for managed volumes. Now, scheduled means it's queued up and it's going to start running. If I click on the events tab here, we will see the event pop up at the top that the backup has started. Okay, as you can see, a little icon popped up here. If I click on this to refresh, we'll see that the backup has started running. And as we click on this, we'll see the details of the event that are running right now. And as progress changes, the results in this event view will also change. We'll give that a few minutes and come back and when this is complete. After a few minutes, the backup completes. And we can see that by looking inside of this event, all the details of what happened. And you can see we wrote 228 gigs into this managed volume. Now that our backups have completed, let's look at doing a recovery. For recovery, you'll see this calendar, and the calendar will show you where you have some type of snapshot that has been taken, notated by the little green check mark on the day. So let's look at today's date and look at what available snapshots there are. We can see this top one was taken during the scheduled snapshot time because it was, you can see here, it was scheduled. And this is the one that I just completed. If I want to do a recovery of the content of this snapshot, I choose the recover operation. Now I'll get two different options here. Recover files allows me to pick the files that I want and download them to the machine that I'm on right now. So let's click on next. And then we'll start to see the folder structure that was created for us to write our backups to the managed volume. There's two different backups done, one earlier in the day and one from today. So if I click on the one I just did, I'll have this as my folder structure here and the files that were written for the backup. This main MBI file is the enterprise backup file, but then there's the other files here that are all the supporting files to this backup. Now, if I want to choose one of these files, I can choose that folder, or I can choose this file here and then click download, and I can download that to my machine. I don't want to download this to my machine because then I'd have to copy it back up to the MySQL server to then do any type of restore. Not the quickest way to recover. So let's look at the other option. If I click the same recover button here, I get mount of a snapshot. If I click mount and hit next, now I can choose where do I want this snapshot to be mounted. So let's choose my MySQL server, and I could actually choose any other server, any other Linux server that that is out there available to me, and I could have very easily put it to that one. But I'm just going to choose the only one I have right now. Now, where do I want to mount this? Well, let's put it into /mnt/rubric/restore and hit mount. Rubrik will take the snapshot and connect it to that MySQL server and make the files available on that Linux host for me to recover from. So let's look at my events and wait for the operation to complete here. Great. the mount has completed. Rubrik has mounted the snapshot to the Linux host. So from here, let's go look at the contents of the snapshot that was mounted. So first, we'll look at the restore folder where we put our snapshot into. And as you can see, we have a couple folders. This mirrors what we saw in Rubrik when we did the recover files process. Let's look inside the second folder that's there and see the contents of that folder. Great, now I can see all the same file and folder structure that I saw in Rubrik under the recover files screen. I can see now on the file system available to me in Rubrik or on the MySQL host. If I want to start to do a restore, then I will edit a restore script that looks like this, where we stop MySQL, we empty the contents of the MySQL folder, and then we restore from the backup. And I would have to change my folder structure, my folder and file name here to match the folder I have here and the file I have here to allow me to do the restore. This would restore the backup into the MySQL data folder, change the ownership of the folders, and then start MySQL when it's all said and done. If I ran this would probably take about 10 or 15 minutes to complete. We won't run this at this point. The last thing I wanted to show is reporting. Now, under our reports tab, we have a list of templatized reports here, and then you can create new reports based on these templates. I've already created a report called Manage Volume Backups. Let's click on that now and go into it. This particular report is built off of the Protection Task Details report, and it's filtered based on the last 24 hours doing backup operations of managed volumes. And the reason why I chose this particular filter is because I can actually have this report look at other operational types and other object types. And in this case here, I'm most concerned with, did my managed volume backups complete? So by filtering out the things that are important to me, I can get a more concise report telling me the important pieces of information that I need. Now I can also go back 7 days so I can get a bigger history of backups here. And you can see we have a wide-ranging amount of success with some failures that are mixed into the process. Now, if I'm looking at this report, I can scroll over and get some additional information about the failures that are happened. So in this case, we had a fail to reset the managed volume. We had a failure to execute the script. This is important because the Rubrik, when the script fails, when it runs the script to back up the database and the script has a failure, that failure is returned back to Rubrik, and now Rubrik can register that into the reporting to let you know that, hey, the backup on this day failed because the script failed. And then you can troubleshoot from there what the root cause is. And that's everything that I wanted to show you. Hopefully you have a good understanding of how our SLA-driven managed volumes can help you protect databases like MySQL or Postgres or other database platforms. And now, let me pass it back to Justin.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So just to wrap up as we close things out, today's database teams need modern backup and recovery solutions that really consolidate protection of all their databases across on-premises and the cloud into a single platform. And this allows them to really offload day-to-day management of backups so they can get their time back to focus on more strategic projects, yet keeping them in control of recoveries and providing self-service access to better operationalize data and support those secondary users that they might have. Okay, and so for those looking to take a deeper dive, I would strongly recommend keeping an eye out for some of our virtual events that we have, where you can actually get hands-on with Rubrik and can see it in action for yourself. Virtual events like our Rubrik Live events or our Rubrik Explore program, which is a self-guided, self-paced lab which I really think you would enjoy. There are also some additional materials on what to look for in a modern data protection solution for databases, as well as a link to a guide on how to recover from ransomware if you're interested. And with that, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this content was helpful. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me directly at justin.rees@rubrik.com. We would love to hear from you. And now let me actually pass it back to our host to close this out. Thanks again.
Thank you, Justin and Chris, for such an insightful session. Now, this concludes today's webinar, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this fantastic virtual event. And thank you again to our partner, Rubrik. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.